The galactic conquest fleet of the Zorgonian Empire was by all objective measures the most efficient conquering force the universe had ever witnessed. 273 planets had fallen to their superior technology, tactics, and the crushing weight of their bureaucratic occupation systems. Their success rate was perfect: 273 victories, 0 defeats, and only 1 postponement due to a clerical error involving mixed-up coordinates that sent them to an uninhabited gas giant instead of a thriving civilization. Admiral Krellner stood at the viewport of the Imperial mothership Inevitable Conquest, his 4 arms folded in various poses of satisfaction as he gazed at the small blue planet on the view screen. His skin shimmered with its natural purple bioluminescence, a sign of contentment among Zorgonians. Fleet Commander Drixel, report. Krellner's voice resonated through his speech gills. Drixel, a stringy alien with skin the color of spoiled mayonnaise, scuttled forward with a data tablet. Admiral, preliminary scans confirm this is the target designated as Earth. Technological capabilities, moderate. Military threat assessment, minimal. Indigenous life forms, abundant but disorganized. Conquest difficulty rating 2 out of 10. 2. That's generous. Admiral Krellner scoffed. I would have given it a 1.5 at most. Protocol demands we round up, sir. Ah yes, the sacred protocols. Krellner rolled all 6 of his eyes. What's the standard operating procedure for a level 2 conquest again? I forget. We've been handling nothing but level 4s and 5s lately. Lieutenant Gorbel, the most junior officer on the bridge, cleared his throat sacs nervously. According to the Galactic Conquest Manual, Section 73, Subsection 9, Paragraph 12, a level 2 conquest requires only a single battalion of ground troops, minimal aerial support, and 1 ceremonial appearance by yourself at the planetary capital to accept formal surrender. How refreshingly simple, Krellner said, his mouth tentacles curling into what passed for a smile in his species. I was getting tired of actual challenges. Do we have the surrender templates prepared? Science Officer Vazix tapped away at her console. Yes, Admiral. The standard template has been updated with Earth as the planet name and humans as the dominant species. I've taken the liberty of having the declaration translated into their 27 most spoken languages. Excellent. I do appreciate efficiency. Krellner turned away from the viewport. Now, what's the estimated time for conquest completion? I have a relaxation retreat scheduled next month on Neptune 5, and their magma baths are impossible to reschedule. Fleet Commander Drixel consulted his tablet again. Following standard protocols for a level 2 civilization, and accounting for travel time, diplomatic formalities, and resource extraction setup, approximately 17 Earth days, sir. Make it 15. Krellner commanded. Cut corners on the formalities. These primitives won't know the difference between a Category A surrender ceremony and a Category C anyway. But sir, the protocols be damned, Drixel. I want those magma baths. They're the only thing that helps my 3rd vertebral column after these long campaigns. Drixel's eye stalks drooped in resignation. Yes, Admiral. 15 days it is. Good. Now, as always, let's follow first contact protocol. Deploy reconnaissance drones to gather more detailed intelligence before we make our presence known. I want to know their weaknesses, their leadership structures, and especially their surrender tendencies. Have they surrendered to anyone before? Always good to know if they're practiced at it. Science Officer Vazix looked up from her console. Sir, preliminary data shows they've never encountered extraterrestrial life. They've only ever surrendered to each other. Krellner's mouth tentacles formed into a wider smile. Even better. Breaking in a civilization to their first alien conquest is always the most satisfying. Deploy the drones. I want a comprehensive report in 12 hours. As the bridge crew rushed to carry out his orders, Admiral Krellner gazed once more at the blue planet, Earth. Just another dot on the star charts, soon to join the illustrious list of conquests that had made the Zorgonian Empire the most feared name in the galaxy. Little did he know that this unassuming blue world was about to become the first entry in a very different list. Planets that made the Zorgonian Empire reconsider its life choices. Sir, reconnaissance drones have completed their initial survey, announced Science Officer Vazix exactly 12 hours later, her tentacle fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Admiral Krellner had been in the middle of his mandatory relaxation period, floating in the ship's anti-gravity meditation chamber. He adjusted his formal uniform, annoyed at the interruption. This had better be important, Officer Vazix. I was just reaching peak buoyancy. I believe you'll find the results interesting, sir. The command crew gathered around the central holotable as Vazix activated the display. Three-dimensional images of Earth's landscapes, cities and inhabitants materialized in the air. As we already knew, the dominant species calls themselves humans. Vazix began. Their technological development is uneven. They have rudimentary space travel but still burn fossil fuels. They've split the atom but can't cure the common cold. Their global communication system is primarily used for sharing videos of juvenile felines and arguing with strangers. Lieutenant Gorbel raised a finger. Most curious is their social structure. Despite having a unified planetary communication network, they maintain nearly 200 separate governing entities they call countries, each with different rules. Inefficient, muttered Fleet Commander Drixel. How do they manage conquest logistics? That's just it, said Gorbel, his eye stalks quivering with excitement. They constantly war among themselves, but they never achieve full planetary unification. They just keep fighting, then sign papers, then fight again later. Krellner waved a dismissive hand. Typical primitive behavior. Hardly worth noting. There's more, sir, Vazix continued. Their physical capabilities are unremarkable, generally weaker than Zorgonians, slower than Neblulons, less durable than Kreks. However, they display occasional bursts of what they call adrenaline-fueled strength that temporarily enhances their abilities. Any significant weapons? Krellner asked. Nuclear arsenals, but they're oddly reluctant to use them. Their everyday weapons fire metal projectiles at high velocity, primitive but effective. Nothing our shields can't handle. Fleet Commander Drixel scrolled through the data. What about this section on entertainment? Why is it flagged as strategically relevant? Vazix's skin flushed a deep orange, the Zorgonian equivalent of a troubled frown. Humans appear to derive pleasure from simulated danger and violence. They deliberately seek out activities that risk bodily harm. For recreation, the room fell silent. That doesn't make evolutionary sense, Krellner finally said. Observe, Vazix said, pulling up a series of recordings. The aliens watched in confused silence as humans hurled themselves down snow-covered mountains on narrow boards, jumped out of perfectly functional aircraft with fabric canopies, and willingly entered enclosures with aggressive creatures for something called wildlife tourism. Are they suicidal? Asked Drixel. No, they call it fun or extreme sports or getting some awesome footage for social media, Vazix replied. Lieutenant Gorbel's eye stalks were now fully extended in alarm. They also consume substances they know to be harmful, deliberately expose themselves to ultraviolet radiation until their skin burns, and operate vehicles at speeds well beyond their reaction capabilities. Admiral Krellner scratched his chin flaps thoughtfully. Curious behavior, but hardly threatening. They're simply irrational. This actually makes our job easier. An unpredictable enemy might be concerning, but an irrational one will make poor strategic decisions. There's one more thing, Admiral, Vazix said hesitantly. Their relationship with the planet's other life forms is complex. How so? Some animals they treat as family members, dressing them in clothing and sharing living spaces. Others they consume as food. Some they hunt for sport. Others they protect with legislation. And most perplexingly, they seem to both fear and admire the large predatory mammals of their world. Krellner yawned, his patience wearing thin. Vazix, is any of this relevant to conquest planning? Our psychological warfare algorithms are struggling to create a profile, sir. Humans don't seem to follow any consistent logic in their relationships with danger, death, or other species. I recommend extended observation before proceeding with invasion preparations. The Admiral's bioluminescence flickered irritably. Fine. Deploy deep cover observation drones. Focus on population centers and these extreme activity areas. I want actionable intelligence, not xenoanthropological curiosities. Yes, Admiral. Vazix tapped her console, deploying enhanced observation protocol. And Vazix, Krellner added, make it quick. Those magma baths won't wait forever, and my third vertebra is killing me. As the meeting dispersed, one of the junior technicians approached Vazix quietly. Ma'am, one of our stealth drones is picking up unusual activity in a region they call Montana. Should I file it under standard observations? Vazix glanced at the feed and paused. No, route that to my personal terminal. Something about this scenario seems statistically significant. The technician nodded and transferred the feed showing a solitary human venturing into a densely forested area with nothing but a small backpack. Vazix couldn't explain why, but something told her this particular human might provide valuable insights into the species' inexplicable behaviors. She had no idea just how valuable and terrifying those insights would prove to be. Science Officer Vazix hadn't left her observation station for 26 consecutive hours. Her colleagues had come and gone, bringing her nutritional supplements and concerned glances. But she remained fixated on drone feed MT 7734, tracking the lone human in Montana. "You're going to calcify your eye stalks if you keep staring at that screen," Fleet Commander Drixel remarked, hovering behind her. Vozix didn't look up. "This human specimen is fascinating, Commander. Name Jackson Cooper, age 34, occupation, wildlife photographer. He's been tracking a creature called a grizzly bear for 3 days, and this warrants your undivided attention because he's doing it intentionally. The grizzly bear is one of the apex predators of the region. Humans categorize it as extremely dangerous. Their own safety protocols explicitly state do not approach bears. Yet this human is seeking one out, armed with nothing but a small canister of deterrent spray and a device that makes clicking noises." Drixel's skin rippled with dismissive patterns. "Just another example of human irrationality." "Hardly, Commander." Vozix's voice rose with sudden urgency. "It's happening. The human and bear are about to interact." Drixel leaned closer despite himself, as Vozix expanded the holographic feed to fill the observation deck's main screen. Several other crew members paused their work to watch. The scene showed a serene forest clearing beside a rushing stream. Jackson Cooper knelt by the water's edge, adjusting the settings on his camera. He was completely unaware that approximately 40 yards behind him, a massive brown bear had emerged from the tree line, nose raised to catch his scent. "Should we alert Admiral Krellner?" asked Lieutenant Gorbel, who had wandered over. "Not yet," Vozix replied. "This could be valuable behavioral data." On screen, the bear lowered its head and began moving toward the human with deliberate steps. The Zorgonian crew watched in fascinated horror as the distance closed. 30 yards, 20 yards, 10. The human remained oblivious, focused on photographing a fish leaping from the stream. The bear was now close enough that its breath would be felt on the human's neck with its next exhale. Statistically, this human's survival probability just dropped below 12%, whispered Vozix's assistant. That's when Jackson Cooper dropped his lens cap. As he turned to retrieve it, he came face to face with 800 pounds of grizzly bear. Time seemed to freeze for both species. The human and the bear locked in mutual surprise, and the aliens watching from orbit in anticipated horror. What happened next would become legendary in Zorgonian military archives. The human did not freeze. The human did not run. Instead, Jackson Cooper let out what the drone's audio sensors registered as an "oh sweet mother of" before executing a backward dive roll that would have impressed even the most agile Zorgonian Special Forces operative. "Unexpected agility," Vozix noted clinically, though her trembling tentacles betrayed her excitement. The bear, momentarily confused by this reaction, rose to its hind legs, now towering nearly 9 feet tall. "Attack posture initiated," commented Drixel with grim satisfaction. "Conclusion imminent." The human, now on his feet again, did something that caused every alien observer to question their sensory inputs. Instead of continuing his retreat, Jackson spread his arms wide, made himself appear larger, and began shouting at the bear. "Hey bear, back up. This is not your day, buddy." "Is he challenging it?" Gorbel asked incredulously. "Impossible," Drixel stated. "No species would challenge a clearly superior predator without weapons." The bear dropped to all fours and charged. Jackson grabbed his backpack and swung it in a wide arc, catching the bear across the face, then immediately pivoted behind a tree. "Improvised weapon deployment and tactical positioning," Vozix narrated, her scientific objectivity beginning to crack under excitement. The bear, now incensed, circled the tree. Jackson circled in the opposite direction, maintaining the trunk between them in a macabre dance. When the bear lunged around one side, Jackson rolled across a fallen log, creating distance, then reached for the canister on his belt. "Deploying primary defense system," Vozix whispered. A cloud of spray hit the bear's face, causing it to rear back, pawing at its eyes and snout. Jackson used this moment to scramble up the nearest tree with a speed that defied Zorgonian understanding of human physical capabilities. "How is he moving so fast?" Gorbel asked. The physiological scans showed humans to be relative weaklings. "Adrenaline response," Vozix explained, her voice tinged with newfound respect. "Their bodies temporarily override normal limitations under extreme stress." The bear, recovering from the spray, began climbing the tree after Jackson. "Did our research not indicate that these bears are excellent climbers?" Drixel asked. "Correct," confirmed Vozix. "Then the human's tactical decision is flawed." "Perhaps not," Vozix countered, pointing to the screen where Jackson had climbed onto a branch that clearly couldn't support the bear's weight. As the grizzly attempted to follow, the branch creaked ominously. Jackson, now seemingly aware of his temporary advantage, began breaking off smaller branches and throwing them at the bear's face, while continuing his vocal assault. "Get down, you overground carpet. I have dinner reservations tonight, and I am not becoming yours." By now, the observation deck was filled with Zorgonian personnel, all standard duties temporarily forgotten, as they watched the life-or-death struggle unfold. Even Admiral Krellner had been notified and stood at the back, his expression unreadable. The bear made one final lunge up the tree. The branch snapped. 800 pounds of angry grizzly bear crashed to the forest floor with a thud that registered on the drone's seismic sensors. It lay stunned for a moment, then gathered itself and looked up at the human with what even the aliens could recognize as a recalculation of effort versus reward. Jackson, not content with this standoff, began kicking the trunk of the tree rhythmically, creating vibrations while continuing to shout. The combined sensory assault apparently exceeded the bear's tolerance threshold. With a final huff that fogged the drone's camera lens, the massive predator turned and ambled back into the forest. For several seconds, the human remained motionless in the tree. Then, to the absolute astonishment of the entire Zorgonian observation team, Jackson Cooper began to laugh. Not the nervous titter of trauma, but deep, genuine laughter filled with what the alien translators identified as exhilaration. He climbed down, retrieved his camera, which had somehow remained intact, and checked the display. "Hell yes," he shouted to no one. "Got the whole thing on burst mode, National Geographic, here I come." The observation deck remained silent, long after Jackson had packed up his gear and hiked back toward his vehicle, occasionally breaking into spontaneous laughter or throwing air punches. It was Admiral Krellner who finally broke the silence. "Science Officer Vozix, what did we just witness?" Vozix's tentacles trembled as she attempted to compose herself. "Sir, a human with no natural defenses just engaged in combat with one of Earth's most dangerous apex predators, armed with nothing but a small chemical irritant and improvised tools. Not only did the human survive, but it appears to have enjoyed the encounter and considers it beneficial to its social status." "Impossible," Drixel muttered. "This must be an anomaly." "Actually, Commander," Vozix said, pulling up additional feeds, "I've compiled similar incidents from around the planet. Humans swimming with aquatic predators called sharks, humans provoking horned herbivores into charging them for entertainment, humans inserting themselves between predators and prey to capture images. This behavior appears statistically significant within the population." Admiral Krellner's bioluminescence had dimmed to a troubled gray. "Tell me, Science Officer, if humans react this way to the predators of their own world, how might they react to us?" Vozix completed his thought. "I believe, Admiral, that we may need to reassess our conquest difficulty rating." Krellner stared at the now empty clearing where the human-bear conflict had occurred. "Convene the War Council immediately. I believe we have a situation." The War Council chamber aboard the inevitable Conquest was designed to intimidate. Black metallic walls absorbed light rather than reflecting it. The central table was hewn from a single crystal of conquered world mineral, and the chairs hovered ominously above the floor. It was in this room that 273 planetary subjugations had been planned to perfection. It had never before witnessed panic. "This is completely unprecedented," declared Strategic Commander Fovox, his eye ridges furrowed so deeply they nearly touched. "I've run the simulation 17 times. Our standard conquest protocols show a 78% projected casualty rate against human resistance." Admiral Krellner's bioluminescence had shifted to a sickly green. "That's impossible. They're pre-warp primitives with projectile weapons. It's not their technology that concerns me, Admiral," Fovox said, bringing up holographic battle projections. "It's their psychological profile. Look at these historical records Officer Vozix has compiled. Humans have a documented history of fighting vastly superior forces through something they call guerrilla warfare. They hide, they strike, they disappear, and they never ever give up." Fleet Commander Drixel scoffed. "We've faced resistance before. The Krata-Nu fought for 12 cycles before surrendering." "The Krata-Nu fought according to predictable patterns," Fovox countered. "Humans don't. They adapt rapidly. And worse," he paused dramatically, "they actually become more aggressive when threatened." Lieutenant Gorbel timidly raised a hand. "I've been analyzing their entertainment media, and there's something disturbing there as well. Humans create thousands of fictional scenarios about fighting alien invaders, and in these scenarios they almost always win. Fiction is irrelevant." Drixel dismissed. With respect, Commander, Vazix interjected. Their fiction reveals their psychological frameworks. They've been mentally rehearsing resistance against us for over a century, before they even knew we existed. Admiral Krellner drummed his fingers on the crystal table. Let me understand this. You're suggesting that a species that fights apex predators for fun has developed specific tactics for confronting superior forces, and has been imaginatively preparing for alien invasion since before their primitive aircraft might actually pose a threat to the Imperial fleet. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. I didn't say that, sir, Vazix ventured. But I am suggesting a level 2 classification was an error. I propose reclassifying Earth as a minimum level 6 conquest target. 6? Drixel's skin blanched to almost white. That would require the deployment of the entire 7th Battle Group. We'd need to recall ships from 3 sectors. And my magma bath appointment, Krellner asked grimly. Would need to be cancelled, sir. Gorbel admitted. Krellner rose from his chair and paced the perimeter of the room. Let's not overreact. We've seen one human survive an encounter with a native predator. Impressive, yes, but hardly evidence of a species capable of resisting our technology. Admiral Vazix said, her voice unusually firm. I've compiled additional concerning data points. She activated a series of holographic displays around the room. Observe these examples of human behavior. The War Council watched in silence as the displays showed firefighters running into burning buildings to save strangers, medical personnel treating highly contagious diseases with minimal protection, disaster response teams tunneling through rubble with bare hands, civilians forming human chains to rescue others from floodwaters, soldiers throwing themselves onto explosives to save comrades, explorers deliberately sailing into storms, climbing deadly mountains, and venturing into caves with toxic atmospheres. The common theme? Vazix asked rhetorically. Humans routinely risk or sacrifice themselves for abstract concepts and other humans they don't even know. They call it heroism and courage, and they celebrate these behaviors. They've built their societies around rewarding individuals who display these traits. Admiral Krellner's face tentacles drooped. And you believe this makes them dangerous opponents? Sir, Strategic Commander Fovox interrupted. I've revised the simulations based on this new psychological data. If humans respond to planetary invasion with the same intensity that individuals showed against the bear, and if they're willing to sacrifice themselves at the rates historical data suggests, the revised casualty projections for our forces are. He paused, double-checking his figures. Unacceptable. Define unacceptable, Krellner demanded. Total, sir. The room erupted into chaos. Zorgonian military officers, the elite strategists of an undefeated galactic power, began talking over each other in increasingly high-pitched tones. Impossible. The simulations must be flawed. We have superior technology. They don't even have proper energy weapons. Admiral Krellner silenced the room with a thunderous slam of all 4 hands on the table. Enough. We are officers of the Zorgonian Empire. We do not panic. The room quieted immediately. Now, Krellner continued, his voice deliberately calm, let's approach this rationally. Science Officer Vazix, you've studied these humans most closely. What do you recommend? Vazix's skin cycled through several thoughtful color patterns before settling on a resolute blue. Admiral, I recommend extended observation. There's a possibility I've overemphasized certain human traits. They are, after all, still fighting among themselves over resources and ideological differences. They have clear weaknesses. Finally, some good news, Drixel muttered. However, Vazix continued. I would advise against immediate invasion. We should deploy additional stealth observation platforms and gather more comprehensive behavioral data. Admiral Krellner nodded slowly. A prudent approach. How long would you need? At minimum, 3 Earth months. 3 months, Krellner exclaimed. My vertebral column will calcify completely. Better a stiff spine than no spine at all, sir. Gorbel blurted, then immediately shrank back as all eyes turned to him. To everyone's surprise, Krellner laughed, a wheezing sound like air escaping from a punctured respiratory sac. The lieutenant makes a valid point. Very well. We will postpone the invasion pending further study. The tension in the room eased slightly. However, the admiral continued. I want daily reports, and I want more information about these human heroes. Find me their weaknesses, their breaking points. Every species has them. As the War Council dispersed, Fleet Commander Drixel approached Vazix privately. Do you really believe humans could resist us? Or are you just being overly cautious? Vazix hesitated. Commander, in my 20 cycles as a xenobiologist, I've never encountered a species that actively seeks out danger for recreation. It defies evolutionary logic. And species that defy logic are unpredictable. And unpredictable species are dangerous. Drixel concluded. Precisely. But there's more. The human in Montana didn't just survive the encounter. According to his vital signs, he experienced a surge of pleasurable neurochemicals afterward. The confrontation made him happy. Drixel's eye stalks quivered with concern. You're suggesting humans might actually enjoy fighting us. I'm suggesting, Commander, that we may not want to find out. 2 Earth weeks had passed since the bear incident. The inevitable conquest remained in stealth orbit, its crew now thoroughly engrossed in studying human behavior. What had begun as routine pre-invasion reconnaissance had evolved into something closer to obsessive anthropological research, or as Lieutenant Gorbel had begun calling it, the terrifying reality show. In the main observation lab, Admiral Krellner reviewed the daily reports with increasing disbelief. They did what? He demanded, his bioluminescence flashing alarmed patterns. Science Officer Vazix replayed the footage. This human deliberately attached elastic cords to his ankles and jumped from a high platform. They call it bungee jumping. It serves no purpose beyond the momentary sensation of freefall and the risk of equipment failure. But, why? For fun, sir. The same reason this human, she switched feeds, is currently running through a city being pursued by large horned mammals. Krellner watched as crowds of humans in a place called Pamplona fled before charging bulls with a mixture of terror and exhilaration on their faces. This makes no evolutionary sense, he muttered, for perhaps the 100th time. There's more, sir, Vazix continued, her professional demeanor fraying slightly at the edges. We've identified a subcategory of humans called toddlers who appear to be juvenile specimens. Despite their small size and undeveloped coordination, they routinely attempt activities that could result in severe injury, requiring constant supervision from adult humans. A species born with a death wish, Krellner mused. Fascinating and disturbing. Fleet Commander Drixel entered the lab, his usual crisp demeanor noticeably disheveled. Admiral, you need to see this. He transferred data to the main screen. We've been monitoring human military training exercises. The screen showed human soldiers crawling under barbed wire while explosions detonated nearby, climbing sheer cliff faces with minimal equipment, and jumping from aircraft into bodies of water. These are their elite warriors, Drixel explained. They call them special forces. They voluntarily subject themselves to conditions specifically designed to push beyond normal biological limits. And if they fail these trials? Krellner asked. They request to repeat them, sir. The Admiral's face tentacles curled in distress. Is there any good news, Commander? Well, Drixel consulted his notes. They're surprisingly vulnerable to bacterial and viral infections. Their immune systems are quite primitive. Finally, a weakness we can exploit. Krellner brightened. Except, Vazix interjected, pulling up new data, they've developed an extensive medical system to compensate. And in situations like pandemics, they have individuals who willingly expose themselves to infection to provide care for others. Out of some misguided sense of heroism, Krellner asked wearily. Precisely, sir. The Admiral slumped in his hover chair. It's as if they've evolved specifically to be the worst possible conquest target for a rational species like ourselves. Lieutenant Gorbel scurried into the lab, his eye stalks fully extended in excitement. Sir, you won't believe what we just observed in a region called Florida. All eyes turned to the junior officer. A human female's juvenile offspring fell into an enclosure containing a large aquatic reptile predator called an alligator. The adult human immediately jumped into the enclosure, pried open the creature's jaws with her bare hands, and rescued the juvenile. Vazix pulled up the footage immediately. The observation team watched in horrified silence as the woman performed what should have been a biomechanically impossible feat of strength, forcing open the powerful jaws of a prehistoric-looking reptile. Strength augmentation through adrenaline, Vazix noted clinically, though her tentacles were trembling. We've seen this before, but not to this degree. The maternal protection instinct appears to amplify the effect, Gorbel added. Admiral Krellner stood up abruptly. I've seen enough. These humans aren't merely reckless or courageous. He searched for the right word. They're uninhibited by the survival instinct that governs rational species. Sir, Drixel questioned. Look at ourselves, Commander. When faced with danger, we calculate risks. We consider retreat when odds are unfavorable. We value self-preservation as the logical priority. Krellner gestured wildly at the screen. Humans routinely ignore all of that. They run into burning buildings, They fight predators. They jump off perfectly stable platforms for momentary sensations. But surely our technological superiority, Drixel began, would mean nothing. Krellner cut him off. If they react to invasion the way they react to every other threat. Not with fear, but with this irrational courage of theirs. Can you imagine what would happen if we landed troops, and instead of running and hiding, the humans just decided to fight back, all of them, with the same disregard for personal safety that we've been observing? The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Vazix cleared her throat sacs. There's something else, Admiral. Something I've been researching privately. She accessed her personal terminal. Humans have developed thousands of fictional scenarios, specifically about resisting alien invasions. They call it science fiction, and in an overwhelming percentage of these scenarios, despite technological disadvantages, humans prevail. Fiction is not reality, Drixel insisted. No. Vazix agreed. But it reveals psychological readiness. Humans have been mentally preparing themselves for our arrival for generations, even though they didn't know we exist. Admiral Krellner paced the lab, his skin cycling through troubled color patterns. Is there anything else I should know before making my final decision? Vazix hesitated, then pulled up one final feed. Sir, remember Jackson Cooper, the human who fought the bear? We've continued monitoring him. The screen showed Jackson, now giving a presentation to a room full of other humans. He was showing photographs of his bear encounter while the audience gasped and applauded. He's become something of a minor celebrity among wildlife photographers, Vazix explained. He's been offered new professional opportunities, increased social status, and potential mating prospects as a direct result of his dangerous encounter. They're rewarding his reckless behavior, Krellner realized with horror. Yes, sir. And not just rewarding it, they're elevating it as an example for others to follow. His social media posts about the encounter have been viewed millions of times, inspiring comments like "totally badass" and "absolute legend." Admiral Krellner stared at the screen, watching as Jackson enthusiastically recounted his near-death experience to an admiring crowd. They're not just unafraid, the Admiral said quietly. They admire those who face danger. They celebrate it. They aspire to it. He turned to his officers with grim finality. And now imagine an entire planet of beings like this, united against what they would perceive as an existential threat to their species. No one spoke. No one needed to. The silence was broken by an urgent alert from the bridge. Admiral, we're detecting unusual activity on the planet's surface. Multiple human space agencies have altered their scanning patterns. They appear to be conducting coordinated searches of near-Earth orbit. Krellner's eyes widened. Have we been detected? Negative, sir. Our stealth systems are functioning perfectly. But they're searching with unusual thoroughness, almost as if they suspect we're here. Vazix finished, examining the data. How is that possible? Lieutenant Gorbel raised a tentative hand. Sir, there's something you should see. He pulled up yet another video feed. This one showing Jackson Cooper being interviewed on something called a podcast. And I swear, man, right after that bear left, I felt like I was being watched, Jackson was saying. Call me crazy, but I've spent enough time in the wilderness to know when something's there that shouldn't be. I looked up at the sky, and just had this weird feeling. You know, like something beyond the bear was observing the whole thing. The podcast host leaned forward. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Jackson laughed. Hey, I'm not saying it was aliens. But, he winked at the camera, it was totally aliens. The observation lab descended into chaos. Emergency Protocol Alpha. Admiral Krellner bellowed, his skin flashing warning patterns so bright that several junior officers had to shield their eye stalks. All personnel to battle stations. Stealth systems to maximum. Prepare for immediate departure from Earth orbit. The bridge of the inevitable conquest erupted into frenzied activity. Crew members scurried to their stations, tentacles flying across control panels as alert klaxons wailed. Sir, Fleet Commander Drixel approached cautiously. Don't you think we're overreacting? The human was clearly joking. Their detection systems haven't actually located us. Are you willing to bet the entire invasion fleet on that assessment, Commander? Krellner demanded, multiple eyes bulging. Need I remind you that everything we've learned about humans suggests they're the most unpredictable, irrationally dangerous species we've ever encountered? Science Officer Vazix's voice cut through the chaos. Admiral, I've completed an urgent analysis of human responses to potential alien detection. There's a high probability they would react with curiosity rather than fear. Curiosity, Krellner repeated incredulously. Yes, sir. If they suspected our presence, Historical patterns suggest they would attempt to establish contact rather than immediately attack. Krellner's face tentacles writhed with agitation. That's even worse. They'd want to meet us. Talk to us. Learn about us? Don't you understand what that means? The bridge crew paused, looking confused. It means, the Admiral continued, voice dropping to a horrified whisper, they'd want to form relationships with us. They might invite us to experience their extreme sports. They could offer us their spicy foods that cause deliberate pain sensations. They might expect us to participate in their death-defying recreational activities. A collective shudder ran through the command crew. Worse, Krellner continued, now fully committed to his panic spiral. What if they decided they liked us? Their fiction suggests they sometimes form emotional attachments to aliens. Imagine being hugged by a being that wrestles apex predators for fun. Lieutenant Gorbel fainted outright at this suggestion. Admiral, Strategic Commander Fovox interjected. Our stealth systems are still fully operational. The humans have no concrete evidence of our existence. However, I must concur with your assessment of the risk. I recommend immediate withdrawal and implementation of Quarantine Protocol Omega-7. Omega-7, Drixel gasped. But that's only been used 3 times in Imperial history. And all 3 were justified, Krellner said grimly. Execute Omega-7. No Zorgonian vessel is to approach this solar system without direct Imperial authorization. Earth is to be classified as, he paused dramatically, a death world. The designation sent ripples of shock throughout the bridge. Sir, Vazix ventured. While humans are certainly unusual, death world classification seems. Did you or did you not show me footage of humans jumping out of functional aircraft for enjoyment? Krellner interrupted. Well, yes, but, and humans who pursue apex predators to take their pictures. That's true, however, and infant humans who will stick anything into their mouths regardless of toxicity unless physically prevented from doing so. Vazix's protests died on her lips. Yes, Admiral, then the classification stands. Krellner straightened his uniform. Navigator, plot a course out of this system maximum speed. Communications, prepare the quarantine boys for deployment at the system's edge. They'll warn any passing ships about the dangers here. As the inevitable conquest began its retreat maneuvers, Vazix approached the Admiral privately. Sir, permission to continue remote observation of Earth. From a safe distance, of course. They're scientifically fascinating, despite being terrifying. Krellner considered the request. Granted, but with strict protocols. No probes within their detection range. We observe from afar only. Thank you, Admiral. Vazix hesitated. Sir, what will you tell Imperial Command? This will be our first failed conquest in 273 attempts. Krellner's bioluminescence pulsed thoughtfully. Failed. No, Science Officer. This was not a failure. This was a strategic assessment resulting in a logical withdrawal. The Zorgonian Empire does not waste resources on high-risk, low-reward targets. And your magma bath appointment. A flicker of regret crossed the Admiral's face. Some sacrifices are necessary for the greater good of the Empire. Besides, he added with a shudder, after seeing what I've seen of humans, I think my back pain is the least of my worries. As the massive ship accelerated away from Earth, the crew gathered around viewing screens for one last look at the blue planet that had so thoroughly upended their conquest plans. It's strange, Lieutenant Gorbel said, having recovered from his fainting spell. They appear so ordinary from a distance. A valuable lesson, Lieutenant, Krellner replied. Never judge a species by its appearance or technology level. Judge it by its willingness to thumb its nose at death itself. Do you think they'll ever make it to the stars, sir? Asked a junior officer. Almost certainly, Vazix answered before the Admiral could. And when they do, may the cosmos help whatever civilizations they encounter. In the silent blackness of space, the inevitable conquest disappeared into hyperdrive, leaving behind only a cluster of warning buoys orbiting the outer reaches of the solar system. Their encoded message was simple but absolute. Extreme danger. Approach at your own risk. Planet Earth classification. Death world dominant species. Humans threat assessment. They fight bears for fun back on Earth. Completely unaware of how close they had come to being the 274th conquest of the Zorgonian Empire. Humanity continued its peculiar existence. People bungee jumped from bridges, swam with sharks, ran ultra-marathons across burning deserts, and occasionally fought off wildlife with improvised weapons. And in Montana, Jackson Cooper uploaded the last of his bear encounter photos to his portfolio website. His phone pinged with a notification. National Geographic was interested in his work. Grinning, he looked up at the night sky, admiring the stars. Got a feeling this is going to be a good year, he said to no one in particular. Like something out there is watching out for us. He had no idea how right he was, or rather how wrong he was about why they were watching.